Growing up, my dad used to say, never buy any green bananas because you never know when Jesus is coming back. Now, some 2,000 years after its expiration date, with violence in the news, multiple wars across the globe, and famine in the Middle East, many of us are looking around for a second coming, and the end time vibes are pretty high. So, is this the end of the world as we know it? How are you feeling? Give us a call, because the show is coming right now. Okay, well, welcome everyone. Today is August 31st, 2025. I am your host, Christy Powell, and joining me again is my friend Sydney Davis Jr. Sydney, how you feeling?
I'm feeling good. How are you feeling, Christy?
Feeling fine. You know, it is a scary world out there for plenty of reasons. I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about, but I don't know. I kind of believe it always has been. Yeah.
Yeah. Not gonna lie, it's always been a little bit scary.
It's a little bit scary. Maybe I'm just a little bit older enough to pay attention and be terrified of it now.
Yeah. I mean, you know, some of our earliest memories are seeing unprecedented events on television. So I feel like, especially most generations have hallmarks of it's always just been a little scary. We've just been coping all this time.
May we find precedented times ahead.
I'm telling you, I would love to just exist in precedented times. I would. I would.
Yeah. Like if we could make fun of a president for like falling down stairs or, you know, adorable little foibles like that.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Cool. Well, so we're going to be talking about the end of days and other terrifying things today. Of course, on Talk Heathen, we are open to all of your questions about religion, secular humanism, atheistic morality, cosmology, philosophy, science, history, life, the universe, and everything. Sydney, is there anybody in particular that you're hoping to talk to today?
I'm hoping to talk to anybody who calls in. I would love to just be surprised.
All right, let's do it. Yeah, grab bag it.
Yep, absolutely.
Cool. Well, Talk Heathen is a production of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. We're a live call-in show, and we have open lines. So get your calls in at 512-991-9242, or from your computer at tiny.cc/callth. And while you're getting those calls all loaded up, let's bring in our friend Aaron to do the Talk Heathen to Me question of the week segment.
YOLO! It's time for everybody's favorite part of Talk Heathen, the Talk Heathen to Me segment. I don't know why we do this at the front. We're going to lose so many people after they hear this amazing segment.
Hey, get it in while you can. Eat dessert first.
That's right.
We're going to say that we will still be here at the end of the show.
That's true.
That's true. If we're lucky, we won't be. No.
Yeah. Okay.
Christy's like, tell me a little bit more about that.
I'll take off my cynical hat now. All right. Last week we asked the question, complete the sentence. Not even a demon would possess blank. And here are our top three answers chosen by we don't know. Somebody chose them. Number 3, Zach reads, not even demons would possess all the skeleton in the Catholic Church's closet.
Oh.
You know, it's tough, but fair and true. But fair and true. Tough, but fair and true. They did it to themselves. I'm sorry. You did it to yourself.
That's merch waiting to happen. Tough, fair, and true.
Number 2 from Cade Moore. Not even a demon would possess Elon Musk because even access to the largest amount of wealth in the world makes it difficult to justify being that cringy.
I agree.
Another tough one. You know Elon Musk hosted SNL one time?
I caught that. Yep. I remember I was there.
I watched that episode. And now I want to know how in the world did that happen? This is before he went all, as some people would say, but I just want to know, how did he get on that show? I don't understand who called who.
I mean, what, like it's hard? Like, I don't know. As one of the few people alive who still watches every week, you can look back on the list and it's not great.
It's not a great list. Okay, I'll have to go look at the list of hosts. All right, and our number one answer from X Million, not even a demon would possess Mary's virgin womb. laying down the tough truths this week. Our audience.
You know, I just pictured the SNL voice being like, featuring Tsar Nicholas III.
Exactly. All right. Well, that takes us to the end of this week's question, or last week's question. Now we have this week's question is complete this sentence. The rarely talked about fifth horseman of the apocalypse is blank. Christy, who is your fifth horseman of the apocalypse? And I believe Elon Musk is taken.
Right? I don't know. Bonnie Blue? We're living in some interesting times. Asking some interesting questions. Let's just say that.
All right. And Sidney Davis Jr., who is your fifth horseman of the apocalypse?
I was going to say Judge Judy, but I was not expecting a Bonnie Blue reference this morning, so I'm rethinking my whole life right now.
Hey, I am always up for conversations about sexual ethics. Let's, I don't want to say dive in deep. I don't want to get that too misconstrued, but yeah, I don't know. There's some conversation there.
We're always up for talking about sexual ethics, so that's why we bring up Judge Judy. That's why we're going to talk about Judge Judy today.
All right, well, that's our question for the week. The really talked about fifth horseman of the apocalypse is. Leave them in the comments on this video, not in the live chat, in the comments, and you'll be entered to win nothing for next week. We'll just like your answer. So
points don't matter.
Yeah,
accolades. Yeah,
that's right. Accolades. Our deep and unending respect. Back to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Aaron. And thank you to everybody who helps make this show possible, who runs everything behind the scenes, who talks to our callers, who helps with social media. I'd love to get that crew cam up and running so we can give just a moment of that screen time and some of those non-existent points and accolades to some of these wonderful folks. And maybe we'll come back to it. All right. We do want to say thank you to everybody who worked so hard to make this show happen and to make it run. So with that, Sydney, I guess I'm curious. Oh, here we go. There's our good, hardworking folks. Thank you so much, everybody. And thank you for everything that you're doing to get that up on the screen.
Can I just highlight that mustache real quick? That epic handlebar mustache is actually the sponsor of today's show. So give it up for our sponsor, Today's Mustache.
Today's Mustache. Beautiful. Well, Sydney, so the end of the world.
Yes.
Is it here? I mean, I know that for lots of folks like Jehovah's Witnesses, hardcore evangelicals, other doomsday sorts, this can be a pretty scary moment.
Yeah.
How are you managing your news diet? How are you feeling when you look at the world around us right now?
That's actually a really good question. I like how you phrase that, news diet. I wish I could go back and tell 20s me this. For those who are watching, I know you're shocked. I'm in my 30s. I know you're gasping.
You are a vampire. It's been established. Yeah.
Take a moment to recover from that information. I think something that's really important, and maybe this is easier now that I consider myself an atheist and I don't believe in an afterlife. If you are worried that the end of times are coming, if you're genuinely worried that the end of times are coming, one, it's coming for everybody. Two, so there's no like FOMO, right?
Sure,
if that's what you think. But two, if you do think it's coming no matter what. You can either spend this time that you think is prior to it coming, enjoying what you love to do in life, spending time with your family, with your pets, things like that, or wigging out about it. I personally don't necessarily think we're living the end of times. I think every generation has always thought they were living the end of times.
Sure.
They've always been standing out on the road with those posters or whatever. Even back in the 17 and 1800s, evangelicals were convinced that the end was coming. I don't think the end is coming.
Turned out to be true for those folks, but for us, maybe.
Yeah. So I don't think it's coming. I'm not worried about it coming, but if it is coming, I still plan on living every day as though there's only so much I can do about those sorts of things. And I refuse to live in fear. And I know that's easy to say, but I luckily am in a position mentally and emotionally where I can say, I refuse to live in fear. If I don't wake up tomorrow, that's okay. I know that I did what I wanted to do in this life for, to a certain extent. So what about you?
No, I think that's fair to say. I mean, honestly, if I'm being real, so much of the music I listened to in my teen years was about just trying to be cool, trying to listen to the music that I was supposed to listen to, regardless of
Right.
what I liked and enjoyed. And in my 20s, so much of listening to the news was about this like moral responsibility to stay informed. And I think that that's maybe closer to where I wanted to be, but it's still missing the mark, because
Right.
if what I see in the news doesn't impact the way that I vote, if it doesn't impact the way that I volunteer, if it doesn't change the way that I spend money, if it doesn't have an impact on sort of me living a moral life or contributing to society, then yeah, it really can just be doom and anxiety porn.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think we have a right to not live in that space
Right.
all day, every day. If you're
Right.
ask yourself who benefits from it. Like, watch the news. I'm not saying that atheists should not be informed. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be participating in political conversations, but what are you getting out of it, and to what end?
Right. Right. And something else to remember is fear sells. So, of course, what all channels are pushing is fear, whether it's like a news channel that you agree with, whether it's one you don't agree with. The fear aspect is what sells headlines and papers and clicks and views. So try to keep that in mind as well. A lot of what you're seeing that might be freaking you out, whether or not it's true is one thing, but the way that it's being pushed. I think we've all seen those clips where two competing news channels will show the exact same clip and both of them insist that their guy destroyed the other one, even though they're using the exact same clip. So even though while what you're watching is like really did happen, the way that it's being sold to you is just that. It's being sold to you so that you continue to watch, you continue to click, you continue to stream. And so I think that also helps a lot when it comes to whether or not to fear that end of times are coming. Are you being sold this idea?
Yeah, and you know what? I think that just makes basic evolutionary sense, right? Like a chimpanzee swinging through the jungle is going to be benefited from remembering which trees have the really good juicy fruit on them to an extent. But the one tree that was full of dangerous snakes or had alligator or crocodiles underneath it, that's the tree that you have to remember in order to survive, in order to send off your genes. So even if 9 out of 10 trees are beautiful and fruitful and wonderful, we're going to hold on to that scary one.
Yes.
And when the scary thing is happening a continent away, it may feel like an existential threat to our reality when it really is just anxiety.
Yep, absolutely. 100%.
Yeah. Well, so you already pointed out that, you know, doomsday cults and this sort of like living on borrowed time mentality has existed pretty much forever. But I mean, I'm a member of a generation that was raised on Left Behind, you know, and we can live stream atrocities from the world over.
Right.
Do you think that we are feeling it worse, or is the world actually like, you know, worse?
So I think it's a combination of things. I think it's the exposure. You know, people, when you talk about things like true crime podcasts, people always say, wow, there just seem like there's so many more crimes being committed nowadays, when in reality, there weren't
crime
podcasts
has been
back
consistently going down for
Yes.
generations.
Yes, but there wasn't YouTube, there weren't podcasts, there weren't shorts, there wasn't Instagram, there wasn't TikTok. We couldn't communicate with each other in the same way. So we, you know, somebody in Oregon couldn't necessarily tell someone in California about what's going on. They couldn't just live stream it like it's happening now. So there's the communication aspect, and then there's just the statistically more human beings alive. I don't think it's getting worse. I think it might be different, and I think it might be statistically just happening at the same rate that it would have happened, but because there's more people, you just see it more frequently. You know,
Sure.
I've lived
We're
in
all
Chicago.
living on top of each other here.
Right. I've lived in many major cities, you know, Chicago, I've lived in Nashville, I now live in Phoenix, Arizona, and people call these cities dangerous a lot, and cities are dangerous. because, in my opinion, of statistics, not because of the actual, there's just a mountain of danger happening in all of these spots. I think if you were to go to a microscopic town in the middle of nowhere, the statistics might be similar, but you're not going to see anything because there aren't if there's not 1,000 people, you don't have to worry about the 1 in 1,000, right?
Yeah, a fractional murder doesn't, mean the same thing.
Right. So yeah, I don't think it's necessarily that the world is worse than it's ever been before. I think communication is just easier. Information is easier. False information is also easier to spread. And things like conspiracy theories are easier to spread as well. But I don't necessarily think it's any worse than it was.
Yeah. No, fair to say, even if, it is reasonable to feel a little frightened when we turn on the news right now. Understanding what that means and trying to keep it in some sort of context is invaluable.
Right. And technology matters too. Like, of course, there were no drone issues in the 70s, right?
Sure,
right. Of course, there were no hackers in the 70s. It's because there wasn't anything to hack. So there's that to consider as well.
Yeah. As technology speeds up, as there are more people inventing new things, as we have more access to knowledge and information, the world seems new at a faster rate. And we as a species are kind of afraid of new things.
Yes. Yeah. Is there anything new that you're afraid of?
Oh, man. I mean, TikTok dances, really everything, if we're being honest. I'm that type of middle-aged right about now.
Yes. AI freaks me out. Not going to lie. AI freaks me out a lot.
Yeah,
Yep.
No, it's an existential threat to humanity, and the memes are excellent. So I don't know. Whatever.
It's very conflicting. Yeah, it's very conflicting. Yeah. Man, it does a great job editing my videos, but please stop putting people's faces on videos that they weren't in. Please. Stop doing that.
Yeah, well, so plenty of folks who have deconstructed religion still deal with a fear of hell or dread of the end times. And I really want people to understand that, yes, that sucks. That pain is real. It matters, but it's also not uncommon. Was rapture anxiety or end times prophecy a big challenge for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And if I'm being totally honest, it still works its way into my brain. Like, I am 100% sure of my atheist stance. But, we were talking before the show, every now and then, just when it's particularly silent or it's the right moment, my brain will go, but what if? What?
Yeah.
What? Or if I'm on a plane,
right? It could be.
Right. If there's turbulence on a plane, I ask forgiveness. I sure do. Now I rebuke it the minute that plane lands. But I think especially, I was a child growing up in the church. And so especially when your most formative years are spent being told that this is going to happen. And I don't think it's going to happen. As an adult, I don't believe it. I don't think it's going to happen. There's still that little part of your lizard brain that was forming, when you were a child that says, but what if? And so I don't think that people should feel alone at all in having those thoughts or feelings, even if they think a little bit more than just what if. Is that your experience as well? Or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely relate to that. Statistically, it's unlikely, but everything that happens. Right? Yes. It happens to somebody. Even if you have a 1 in a gore billion chance of getting this disease, try telling that to the person who gets that disease.
Yes.
So I do recognize that component to it. But for me, growing up in the church and reading Left Behind, we weren't allowed to have Harry Potter. So for us Christians, Left Behind was our big tentpole franchise.
Which is crazy.
Which is absolutely crazy when you think about it.
What it is.
Yeah. But I mean, that stuff was absolutely everywhere. It was coming from the pulpit every single week. It was in the air that we breathed. I mean, that joke I made at the beginning of the show was a real thing that my dad would say. Do not buy any green bananas. And I think that thinking goes into his retirement account and goes into, any type of planning for the future. And that is a very scary reality to be sort of sitting in. And it is going to stick with us a little bit.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
For me, a big part of letting that go for me personally was I spent all this time in the church talking about all of these ideas. And honestly, nobody ever really pointed out or tried to explain to me where it says directly in the Gospels that Jesus was supposed to be here by now. You know, we talked about him coming like a thief in the night someday, but it was never pointed out that it was supposed to be while many of those folks are still alive. And I know that people can quibble over how we are meant to interpret scripture, and I'm not trying to dive too deep into that game. But it is kind of low-key amazing to me that Christianity is still a valid worldview and construct with that glaring issue right there in the fine print of their own sacred texts.
Yeah. I wonder if, well, I don't wonder. I know part of it is because the alternative is so horrible. A lot of people say, I'd rather believe it and be wrong than not believe it and be wrong.
The Pascal's wager kind of philosophy of it all. Yeah.
I was one of those, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, is there anything, like we've talked about media diets and how to interpret things. Do you have any advice on how to move past that? Was there anything that worked for you to let go of hell or to let go even when there's airplane turbulence or whatever else?
Yeah, part of it, and I don't, maybe this is like a nihilist perspective. I don't think it is, but part of it is that whole, well, regardless of what's happening, there's nothing I can do about it, right? So I might as well not spend a lot of time just panicking in fear.
My efforts into things that are useful.
Yeah. But there's also, you know, historically, the rapture really didn't show up in religious conversation until very, very recently. It is an incredibly recent idea. And so just from an analytical perspective, I think to myself, if nobody else believed it and nobody else experienced it, then the chances that I don't have to believe it and also won't experience it is pretty high. But if, say, for example, the Christian religion is true, I grew up in the Baptist church and they tell you that once you're saved, you cannot be unsaved. And as long as you ask forgiveness, you'll make it into the kingdom of heaven. So I got saved when I was 10. As long as I ask for forgiveness at the end there, you know, or at the gates, technically I should make it in if they're not lying.
I've got it locked in. Yeah. Right. No, I'm in that book. No, we stopped going to Baptist churches over the once saved, always saved philosophy. So I guess that particular branch of the doomsday cult wasn't doomsday enough for us. Right. We had to look for something harsher.
We don't need a loophole. We need something worse.
Yeah.
Something worse. Wait a second.
Yeah. Well, so I know that this is a very big question for me to lay on you, but I really feel like people overlook how much the impact of that, like living on borrowed time philosophy really has on our politics and on our culture.
Yes.
What do you see in the modern political landscape when we talk about, you know, the world ending in this generation or soon?
I see it being weaponized, to be honest with you. You know, it goes kind of back to that whole fear sells. I think, not pointing any fingers, but I think there's a lot of people that recognize people are so afraid of things like the end of times and the rapture and God's second coming or Jesus' second coming, that they will, again, they would rather do what they're told supports that narrative and keeps them safe and be wrong than not do those things and find out they're wrong. So I do think there are a lot of people who claim to be of that belief system and claim to be Christians, and what they're actually doing is capitalizing on the fact that the majority of this country is Christian, and they run on fear, and they will do pretty much anything as long as they're convinced that the Bible or God or Jesus wants them to do it. So unfortunately, once you've stepped out of that lens where you believe any of that stuff, in my opinion, it's been a lot easier to see just how often it is weaponized by people who recognize they can do a lot with that message and with that fear.
Yeah, I mean, all humans have to grapple with the existential reality of the fact that they themselves will die. And I think it makes sense that religion can very much hijack that fear and try and feed us stories of eternal life, of protection from the end times, and all of these kinds of things. And it is a very powerful motivator to keep your head down and not think about it too much.
Yeah. What do you think about when you think about the end of life? What feelings do you have? What thoughts or ideas do you have about like the end of your life or the notion of dying?
Man, sometimes I do feel it motivating me to live a life well led, to make sure I'm being intentional with the time that I have. And I can find it to be very life affirming in that way. But more often than not, I come to the conclusion that where death is, I cannot be. I am going to just live until I stop, and I'm never going to go through the experience. There might be a moment or perhaps a long delayed experience of quote dying, but the I that I think of as I will never be dead. Right. For whatever that means. And that brings me a lot of comfort to just recognize that in some ways that's kind of somebody else's problem.
Yeah. That somebody else is going to foot that bill. That's for sure.
We'll be there for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do whatever you want at my funeral. I'm not going to care.
That's fun. Although I will say, I request that if you should pass before me, haunt me if you can, just so I know.
If you can.
I'll haunt you, but I'll do it nicely.
It's a pact.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah, well, before we jump onto the phones, I guess I also just want to highlight a little bit about the way that we live in a culture that sort of responds to global warming or responds to war in the Middle East as maybe that's a good thing. Maybe we want to usher in the end of the world. And I have to say that maybe scares me more than the rest of this.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think that there are people that truly do want that? Do you think there are people that think the greatest thing that could happen is the end of times? Or
know them. I used to be them. I was raised among them. I have no doubt. I think that there's a lot to be said about U.S. foreign policy towards Israel, for example. There are a lot of ideas around how this is a quote good thing, and ushering in the end times is just speeding up when we get to meet Jesus in the air.
Man, it's so odd to talk about as reality. I just gotta, I gotta break my calm for a second. Sometimes I hear these things and I'm like, what is going on? what
Maybe I don't need to watch the news anymore.
Yeah. I think I watch the news now more of just what's going to happen today? What are they going to say? What am I going to find out people believe?
Sure. Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah, well, on that delightful note, I really want to find out how the audience is feeling. I want to learn more about your experiences of, Jerry Jenkins and Tim LaHaye left behind, your experiences of living in a doomsday cult, your experiences of just turning on the news right now in this wild time that we're living in. And give us a call. But first, let's talk to Benji in Alabama. Benji, what is on your mind today?
Hey, so I was going to call in about why God doesn't reveal himself, but also, just as a side note, I think society as a whole, nowadays at least, is going to probably end up destroying themselves just based on the past 30 years, roughly, or even since the 60s. I mean, to be technical, I'd say since the 60s. There's been division and war and everything else more than there has been in the past 100 years or so.
Yeah, but you say the 60s is maybe the moment we started to become divided. I have to draw your attention back a few decades before that when we might say the world was the most divided, when we had a very large war all around the world.
Yeah, I was going to say World War I, World War II, but I figured 60s would be a good spot to start because
gotta draw a line somewhere for it to all begin. The end of the beginning of the end.
Well,
what about the global wars, though?
The books that got out of the Bible, but God has did this several times already, right? At least in the old story.
I lost you a little bit for a moment there, Benji. I'd love for you to start fresh and talk to us about God revealing himself and what insights you might have to offer to explain that to us.
Yeah, so in the Bible, which I know you don't really care much for it, but
sure. But when we say that why doesn't God reveal himself, we are talking about ostensibly the Christian God.
No, I get that. Yeah. So God has made the world several times now. and destroyed it and did it again and destroyed it and did it again. And I'm a Gnostic, and the last time he destroyed it was a flood, and now people think he's going to destroy it with fire or whatever.
Yeah,
And
can you tell me what you
as
mean when you
far-
describe yourself as agnostic while talking about the accuracy of the
agnostic,
Bible
not
and of theoretically the Christian God?
Yeah, so Gnostic, I'm a Gnostic, not agnostic, just a little trick on that. And then also, I believe God is somewhat evil. You can't have good without evil. If you had all good, you wouldn't recognize what good was because you would have nothing to compare it to. And then the whole issue
I
of
agree
free
with that,
will,
Benji.
as far as that goes. Sorry, what was that?
Oh, I was just saying, I actually agree with that. That if you don't have evil to scale with good, you don't recognize when you actually have good. Yeah, that's interesting.
Right. Yeah. But the other thing too, I think if God did choose to reveal himself, either people wouldn't believe that he is actually God, or it would just create a situation where he would have to destroy us anyway. I think that free will.
Well, who is
in
this
some
God that we're
aspects
talking
might have
about?
been
I'm still really kind of hung up on that question. Like I don't need him to be the Christian God. We can talk about him in more general terms or think of it as a philosophical God. But if this God is partly evil, are they all powerful? Do they have the ability to convince people that they exist? Do they have the ability to reveal themselves at all?
So I would explain this like this. So I'm talking about the Christian God, and I am a very old version of Christianity where God is not literally all powerful. Now, he did help create the universe and stuff like that, but there's limits. And I mean, there's limits on all of his abilities.
Why?
So, for example, he's logically possible, not infinitely possible. You can't create a watch so heavy you can't lift it type crap.
Well, who would be putting
the-
limits on God though? If God created everything.
Well, God helped create everything, which really begs the question.
Well, the Bible was polytheistic anyway. A lot of people don't even know that. But back in the day when Jesus supposedly was alive in Jerusalem, everyone was actually polytheistic. You had Baal, you had Elohim, and all the other older gods that came before Jesus, or Christianity, or whatever you want to call it. And so, I mean, if people looked at the history of that, and even God himself, if you believe the Bible is the Word of God.
Do you believe that? Do you believe that the Bible is accurate? Do you believe that it is mostly accurate? Is it useful? Is it the Word of God? And if so, what does that even mean?
So the Bible is not accurate at all. I mean, it would have been if they would have wrote it down, whatever was said. But then you have the game.
So it's not perfectly or inerrantly correct, but it is good enough to warrant scholarship, to warrant reading.
Right. Well, it is. I mean, it has good advice in it, just like anything else would. I mean, you can find usefulness in just about anything. However, in the Bible,
I don't know about that.
when they
I don't know
put the
about that.
Bible together, they took a whole lot of books out of it, burned it as heresy. The language barriers and things that happened from Hebrew to Greek, Latin, English, and all of the other things, there's a lot of stuff that got either mistranslated or took out or changed, over the several centuries. And even, for example, the King James Bible, 1500s, I believe, England King James version, even that, the Old English has words that don't actually translate to what the Greek and the Hebrew said. And so a lot of scholars can tell you, the Bible's good for, positivity or something in some aspects. It does have.
Sure. Well, so if the Bible is good or decent, but far from perfect, why are we going to the Bible to understand morality instead of, philosophy or psychology? Why are we going to the Bible to understand the creation of the universe rather than geology or even history?
Well, I'm going to answer that in two ways. One, I don't go to the Bible to understand reality because the Bible, to me, is a collection of books that was written by humans several hundred years ago. That
So you
Okay,
don't
so
think it is?
Yeah, I'm on board with that, but I have to ask respectfully, why are we talking about the Bible then? Because I thought you were trying to explain to us why God doesn't reveal himself.
Right.
Right, that's what I was trying to get back onto. We kind of got sidetracked there. The reason why God doesn't reveal himself is it would create a scenario where everyone could rebel against him, which is probably something he doesn't want, and then he would have to destroy the earth and start all over. Which, in retrospect, I think giving free will to people was a mistake anyway. Because on one hand, if he had a world where everyone was reverent towards him and knew who he was and was, just subservient the whole time, and this would be a world without sin, because sin was the separation in some aspect of God to some people. So if we didn't have sin and everyone was naked and everyone knew who God was, he probably just didn't want that, wiped it out. Because that's the flood, basically, and all the other crap that happened, angels, mating with humans or whatever.
Didn't the flood actually happen? Wasn't the supposed reason the flood happened because people were sinful and were bad and they weren't obeying God? Am I remembering that incorrectly? Isn't that kind of what that was about, where everybody was sinners except Noah and his family who...
It wasn't just the human ways. I mean, there was angels that came from heaven, mated with females. Do
you actually believe that?
Well, it's in the old books that they banned, but yeah, I mean, it says that, like in Enoch, for example, the Watchers.
Right. So it says that in the Bible or some versions of the Bible, but I'm still really kind of circling this question of, do we even believe the Bible at all, a little bit, or how come, or why not?
I think there's some truth to it, but I think a lot of it has either been changed or misinterpreted or mistranslated.
So what parts of it do you think are true then? If you had to highlight some points where you're like, this part is for sure true, and why?
Well, I mean, I believe in angels and heaven and hell and stuff, but I would say the book of Revelation was referring to Moro or whatever the emperor in Greece at the time. And then, because that's what a lot of scholars say, they say that Revelation was more referring to the Greek war than anything, and Roman Empire. And then I would say that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are basically copies of each other. And really, none of the Gospels, we don't know who wrote any of the Gospels because they're all anonymous. And I would say that the church put the names on there, and it's just been a matter of tradition. And I've tried to point this out to people at my church, and then they just get pissed off because they want to believe what they want to believe. But in my opinion, if someone's not ready for the truth, you can't tell them the truth and then believe you anyway. And then also, I think the human race is going to destroy themselves eventually because of war, famine, disease, plague, and everything else, plus natural storms that are getting worse and worse because of greenhouse gas effect and global warming, which I know y'all brought that up earlier. But the way that the world is now, I'm very old, and I'm just tired of the world trying to destroy themselves. And you have, police and citizens and military and everything fighting against each other, and it's a bunch of bullcrap. And then on top of that, Christians want to try to blame all of the bad stuff on Lucifer and all of the good stuff on God. But if God is the one in control, then ultimately the bad that happens in the world will be God's fault too. Which is why I stay a Gnostic, because Gnostics believe that God is partly evil, which makes sense if you believe in the Bible. But for some reason, Christians nowadays want to cherry pick and say, oh, well, God's not evil, but it literally says in the Bible, number one, it says God created good and evil, which would make him evil. He also created hell. That makes him evil. And then it also says Lucifer has dominion over all of the earth. which is why
Benji, I hear you cherry picking from the Bible and not identifying as a Christian, but as a Gnostic, while also going to church and reading the Bible and talking about something that sounds a lot like the Christian God. And I'm not saying that you're right or wrong about any of these points, but I am very much trying to understand what makes you different. How do you know these things that you know, or why do you believe these things that you believe?
Well, what I was just quoting is actually in the Bible. It's just people don't really pay attention to it.
Okay, but do we care what's in the Bible? Do you
Right.
care what's in the Bible if it's not accurate in many ways?
Well, I know that stuff is. I mean, I know some of the stuff is, but as
How though? Like what when you look at parts of the Bible, what makes you point at some and say that's true and others and say that's not true and I'm sure of this?
yeah, historicity, personal experience, as well as the older books that came before the Bible, like the Epic of Gilgamesh, and the history of the other gods that came before the Bible, which, for the record, the Bible was polytheistic, not monotheistic anyway. But there's a whole lot of history. There's a whole lot of history to jump through when you actually investigate the Bible and realize, oh, well, a lot of Jerusalem and Samaria and all these other places was worshiping other gods, including Baal, which, in fact, there's a story in the Bible where a group of people worship Baal, and then another guy worships Elohim or Jehovah, or whatever you want to call them. And they did a experiment to see what caused the fire to start on those rocks, and it was a chemical reaction from the water.
So sorry, the fire. I'm so sorry. The fire where? I think there was a part there that wasn't explained.
Yeah, so there's a story in the Bible where there's I think two groups of people. One worships Baal, the other one worships Elohim or Jehovah, and they're basically challenging each other. They're like, okay, well, whoever can start a fire, on these rocks or start a fire. That God's the true God. And then the ones that worship Baal wasn't able to. And then the ones that worship Jehovah, Elohim, they had rocks that I believe was limestone or something. When they put the water on it, caused the chemical reaction and caused the fire.
So wouldn't that...
They wouldn't know that at that time. But,
okay. I see what you're saying. Sorry, I was going to say, wouldn't you say that's science? But you might actually say that's science.
Huh?
Never mind. Right. Continue. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so that's the summary of that story where I was getting that from. It's in the Bible, but I forget what verse it is.
Sure. I mean, I think you're talking about the story of Elijah and the prophets of Baal in First Kings, but I'm very much trying to understand which parts of the Bible are true, which aren't, and how do you specifically determine the difference? And I'm not asking you to be perfect. Like anytime I read a science textbook that is maybe a few years out of date, or honestly is just written by a theorist that I don't always agree with or concur with, I read critically, and I might find things that I believe to be accurate and things that I don't believe to be accurate. But I'm able to discern those things because I've read a lot of other books that I'm comparing them to. And I, bring my own theoretical framework to all of this. Tell me about yours.
Yeah. Let me point out the differential there between science and religion, even the Bible and the science book as far as that goes. So the Bible has stuff that has been changed and rewritten and mistranslated, amongst other things, so there's no way to tell what's what. Science, by definition, is the process of learning that is constantly evolving and fixing itself and correcting itself. So there's not really going to be an abstract, absolute answer in science because let's say, for example, that, perfect example, the firmament over the earth. Right. And back 100 years ago, roughly 150 years ago, people used to argue that the universe was finite or that the world was finite. And that there was a dome over the earth, the firmament, they'd let the water through the firmament, the dome into the earth and what, yada, yada. We don't believe that anymore. I don't. Some people do, I think, but most people don't. And so that's an example of religion versus science, because religious people would say, oh, well, yeah, but, it was a misinterpretation or something to that effect. Where science goes, oh, well, we went to the moon and there's no dome, over the earth. We can see the earth from the moon, and so we know there's no dome. And so basically what religion does is just move the goalpost. And they say, oh, well, the dome's actually, over the solar system or over the Milky Way or wherever.
Sure. But what do you do, Benji? Like, what do you do to understand which parts of the Bible are of value? And I want to point out, I've kind of tried to ask you that question a few different times, a few different ways. I'd like to hear your answer and leave it there if we may.
So I base value on the Bible based on personal experience, my knowledge, and how I live my life. So I guess you could argue secular morality.
Sort of a knows it when I sees it kind of mentality. If it feels right, it must be at least somewhat accurate, and then you compare it against other things that you've read.
Pretty much.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your honesty and your ownership of that. And, in a certain sense, I'll say that that's really all any of us can do. But I have to say that if this is the book that you're doing that too, and these are the conclusions that you're drawing, there might be something about your epistemology that's worth really examining. Consider your sources, consider your use of intuition and some of your strategies for evaluating truth.
Well, I definitely don't use faith. So
definitely don't use faith. Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. I think we can largely concur on all of that. And, I appreciate you trying to wrap your head around all of this and trying to share all of it with us. And I would also just maybe like to encourage you to read some better books. If you want to understand where the world came from, if you want to understand how to be a good, just, and moral person, there's some much better books worth considering.
Yep. Absolutely.
Well, I know about planetary disk and all of that. I know how the world got formed. I know about the gravity forces that helped bring the world together and created the world and molten rock and, all of that stuff for
that's good.
Of years. So, also the moon came from the earth too. So, I've seen, I watched also hundreds of times now. I've been watching it for over 10 years now. And I've seen people call in that say, oh, we was never on the moon. It was a hoax and yada, yada, which they don't understand. In the 1960s, we didn't even have the technology at that time to fake a moon landing. And then
sure, I hear that.
Not radio frequencies or any of that other crap that it would have took, laser lights and everything else to distort shadows and make it all one direction, which isn't possible on the Earth. Not the way that the moon was. So if you're familiar with the photos that Neil Armstrong took when he went on the moon, all of the shadows are one directional and diagonal, which wouldn't be possible on the moon. And the only reason that it wouldn't be possible on Earth. And the only reason it happened on the moon is because the way that the sun waves hit the Earth, hit the moon, there's no reflection, there's no refraction or anything of the light, so everything's parallel.
I think we're on board with agreeing that the moon landing did happen.
Yep.
And I'm just excited that we got to go there with you today. So, again, I don't disagree with many of your conclusions. I'm completely on board with, even if I hear you pulling in some other things that you just don't maybe have a lot to stand on.
Yeah. It's how we get there that I think we disagree mostly.
Yeah. Yeah. But I appreciate your time and you talking to us today.
Yeah, I think the getting there is the important part. And also science is going to continue to advance, which I don't know if you're familiar with the knowledge, I forget exactly what it was called, but eventually science is going to outpace humanity. Technology is going to be indistinguishable from magic. And actually,
I think in many ways, technology has outpaced humanity. We know that social media is bad for our health on a million different measures, and yet we created it and choose I'm using that word very loosely, to use it. What a life. What a world. Benji, thank you so much for your time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a good example to go to would be artificial intelligence.
It sure is.
100%.
Take good care, Benji. You have a nice day.
I mean, he's not wrong. I was about to bring
not
up the
wrong.
whole
He's
AI
not wrong.
girlfriends thing going on.
Honestly, that's why I wanted to keep that conversation going as long as we did, is because we just kept bumping into things that made me go, well, yeah, I'm so glad you know that. I didn't expect you to know that. So
yeah.
Good on you. God bless.
And I gotta say, Benji has come a really long way since the first time I talked to him, maybe a year or two ago. So Benji, you're doing great.
Appreciate you. We also appreciate our top 5 patrons this week, all of the folks that help to keep the lights on and pay our bills. Of course, we want to honor and thank by name our top 5. Number 1 being Oops All Singularity. Number 2, Dingleberry Jackson. 3, Kalevi Helvetti. 4, J.A. Carlton. And 5, Moldred D. Malcontent, who I'm still very much in love with that name. Our honorable mention this week at the number 6 spot is Martin Deemers. And I'd like to apologize to all of them because I did not give Sydney the opportunity to read them in a ridiculous voice or accent. It's just ruining our content. Yeah.
Disrespect.
Well, Sydney, are you ready to talk to Josh in Indiana?
Let's do it.
All right. Josh, what do you have for us today?
Hey, guys. How you doing? I'm wildly surprised that I was next.
Yes.
Cool.
Oh, yes.
So, I'm interested
Sydney,
in what you have on your mind.
Well, thank you. Sydney, I spoke with you and Dr. Ben. It was a while back.
A while. Yeah, it's been like a year or so.
Wow, you remember me. I'm so surprised.
I do. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was a while. There were a couple of things that I feel like I didn't explicate to you guys clearly enough.
Okay.
First of all, I don't necessarily believe in the explanations that are given in terms of a Native American spirituality. Not necessarily.
That feels like a very big claim with not a lot of context or information for me. Josh, can you tell me where we're going with this conversation?
Yeah, sure. Basically, I've spent about 20 years, give or take, moving in and out of the Native American ritual space. So I've seen a lot of very unusual things. The one I talked about last time was the one that was very weird, and it affected me in very strange ways. I'm not really particularly interested in talking about that one today, because it was a one time, right? Like it happened a singular time. But there are things that I've seen 20, well, no, that's too many. No, it isn't. Probably 15 or 20 times. And that is, they call them spirit lights. Nobody's ever told me what they think they are, but they appear in most of the 7 sacred ceremonies at some point. Not every time, but sometimes. So like in sweat lodges, for instance, quite dark. And I would say, I'm trying to do the math in my head, probably did about 50 or 60 sweats a year, give or take. And you would see them in maybe 1 or 2 per year. And that is
what. So sorry, I feel like maybe I'm missing some context. What is it that we're seeing, or what is it that you're saying we're seeing?
Oh, sure. There are these little green lights.
Okay, so you're saying there's green lights that you see during spiritual ceremonies that are performed by specific Native American tribes.
Correct.
In the context of incredible dehydration and physical distress, I might add. Yeah.
Right.
Well, in a sweat lodge, yes. But if you're talking about like Yaweepi or Lawampe, that's indoors and it's just dark.
Okay.
Okay.
Like totally dark. So you get these things. They don't seem to respond to stimulus, like they're present, but you can't touch them. Like I've tried to grab them multiple times, failed every time. And it's very unusual.
What do you understand them to be, or imagine or believe that they are?
I don't know. I really don't, man.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm not a neurobiologist, but I feel like I can propose some theories. But I also have to imagine that you are participating in these ceremonies, establishing yourself in that context, and then calling the show to tell us about it because you have some guesses.
I also do have a question. Is anybody imbibing during these ceremonies? Because I do know that during a lot of ceremonies, very similar to what you're describing, there are things like ayahuasca involved, different forms of natural things being smoked. So I'm just curious, in this instance, had anybody been smoking or drinking anything?
Lakota ritual is very, very sober.
Okay.
Pretty much exclusively, to the point where, well, at least in the communities that I was in, like I can't speak across the board, but in the communities that I was in, they really didn't even want you to go and do ayahuasca ceremonies or peyote road stuff.
Okay.
Because at least in the way that I was taught during that time frame, you get your visions, you get your experiences by doing the rituals, not a substance, essentially.
And so through these experiences and witnessing these mysterious lights that you're describing, are you, and correct me if I'm wrong, but are you saying that this is an example of a belief system or a spirituality, a system of spirituality that is more believable than the Bible? Or are you saying experiences like that are why you think there's a chance there might be truth to the Bible? Like what are your thoughts in terms of belief and what you believe?
I'm more interested in information gathering methodologies from a social science perspective.
Okay.
That don't, what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, goodness. Asking questions that don't infer answers to gather good data, right? Because you can ask somebody like, hey, did you see those green lights? And there's a good, or at least I won't even say good. There is some chance that they're going to be like, oh, yeah, man, I saw those. That was so weird. When they didn't, right? Like that is a thing that exists. People do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, especially in a group context, if you're all standing around talking about it, it's really easy for, I don't even want to say bad faith actors, but that's kind of what they would be, to not give you truthful results, right? Like, I'm more interested, like myself, in just getting an idea for how these things happen. Like, is there a naturalist explanation that can cover these things appearing indoors, outdoors, winter, spring, summer, fall, in the mountains, in the forest, in the desert?
Yes. Yeah, I absolutely believe that there are. Sydney, did you want to jump in? I saw you. Didn't mean to cut you off.
No. My thought is, though, what's the common denominator there? Human beings,
Right.
human eyes, human brains. So while I can see that there are questions like that, like why is this happening no matter the climate, no matter the time of day, no matter the group of people, the thing that we have in common in all of these instances is that human beings are experiencing these things. So maybe it's less about the environment and more about something internal that's happening with human beings that can be explained physiologically if someone were to look into it.
So what if I hear you and I agree with you? The part that gets to me is that they are multiply attestable in a group of 8 to 10 people. If you're smart about the way you ask questions, like the way I try and do it is like, what was that like for you? You know, what was your experience? Tell me about it. First round, second round, third round, fourth round. You know, having been around it long enough, I know how to walk my way around getting the information I'm looking for without implanting ideas in people's heads. Like, I'm okay at it. And I mean, like, I've poured 4 sweats myself. That was just because people asked me to. One of those 4, the lights showed up, which, man, I don't know. It's weird. It bummed me out.
Let me give you, it's going to sound like a weird example, but stick with me. It's going to sound weird, but I promise there's a point. So capsaicin, the stuff that makes jalapeno spicy, right? No matter where we live, say you and Christy and I are all on Zoom together. We're at different parts of the planet. It's different times of day, depending on where we're located. It's different climates, depending on where we're zooming in from. We all take a jalapeno and we all bite into the jalapeno. All 3 of us are going to experience a burning sensation. We're all going to go, oh, wow, that's spicy, that's hot. Now, we might disagree on how spicy or hot it is, right? Like if one of us has been eating jalapenos every day, we may not be surprised that it's spicy. But we're all going to have the exact same, wow, that's really spicy reaction. However, I have parrots, and parrots do not react to capsaicin. Capsaicin does not impact them at all. They don't know what spicy is. They've never heard of it. They can bust open a jalapeno, munch, 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 eat just fine, not have any spicy experience whatsoever. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because even still, in the other examples you're giving, where you're like, but I've seen it, I've felt it, in every example in which you are polling your audience is human. In every location you've been where you're polling your audience is human. So while the environment may not change the outcome, and while the location may not change or the time of day may not change the outcome, at the end of the day, the only way that you're gathering evidence is by using humans and by asking humans their perspective. And maybe the common denominator there is something that's physiologically being experienced and felt by human beings because of the way that we are, because of the way that our bodies operate. And I would be curious to see if there's a way to tell if maybe other species experience those same lights. Are humans the only ones that do? Is there something with the human eyeball that creates that anomaly that doesn't happen to, say, goats or dogs or cats? So that would be my only argument there, is at the end of the day, no matter what language you speak or where you're located or what the weather's like or what time of day, the only species that you are able to get data from by speaking to them about their experience is a human, right?
Well, if I can add on to that metaphor, Sydney, we know that humans as a species, like not only are we sensitive to spicy foods, but we know that humans as a species reliably, when deprived of access to light, have light-based hallucinations.
Yes.
That's something that we can replicate in a laboratory and something that we just know to be true about human beings.
And group hallucinations that they genuinely believe they're seeing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Phosphine activity is what that's called, I think, right?
I don't know. Good
Not
question.
familiar with that term myself.
Yeah.
That's from Philip K. Dick, from one of his novels. He describes something vaguely similar.
Sure. Okay.
Oh my goodness, I'm sorry, guys. I hurt my back, and now it's saying, why did you do that? What? So
Yeah, well, sorry to hear it. But I guess, is that the most reasonable naturalistic explanation? Is there a spiritual or any other explanation that you think makes more sense, and why?
well, I mean, that goes back to like, even if I could verify, right? Like, even if I could say definitively, this is a thing that happened, there were lights, right? Like, we had a camera in there, something. That wouldn't prove anything. All it would prove is that there was a flash of light. In terms of, if you were to look at it culturally, you get a couple of different answers. Sometimes it is spirits that, walk with that particular medicine person manifesting themselves in the lodge for a purpose, ?
And you're sure of that? Or that's what they believe?
Oh, that's one of the cultural contexts, or not context, but answers that if you were to ask
what are your
a medicine person,
conclusions?
like, hey, what was that? My conclusions are...
What are your conclusions or assumptions? Okay. Yeah.
I really don't, bud. Like, I would love to say, like, oh, yeah, those are X, Y, Z. But for me to be able to say that, I need an awful lot more proof than just lights appearing in a dark place,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and again, we're talking in very abstract terms. So I am not going to be able to sit here and say that, this person at that sweat lodge at that time had this specific experience. But I am able to comfortably say that human beings do tend to hallucinate light when they are deprived of access to light. And that's just a thing that we know and is very likely an explanation for what we're discussing here. So again, what are we discussing here, and why? Like, is there a sense of something supernatural at work, or what are your curiosities around this subject?
Man, my curiosities ultimately are, is it mass hallucination? I haven't been able to find any good, like, academic, and you know what I mean when I say that, like a peer-reviewed paper on mass hallucination. I haven't been able to find a good one, but I'm not an academic, so that's probably on me. At first, I thought they were maybe fireflies, but that doesn't hold up to any kind of rigorous look. It doesn't. But when we're... Yeah, I'll just give you, for instance, from back when I was kind of still just starting. It was one of my first experiences seeing them. And we had gotten into a sweat, and the guy who was next to me, he was a native guy doing this his whole life. And I noticed that he was wearing a ring. And I saw, those little green lights floating between the two of us. And I thought, like, oh, that's just his ring catching some light off of the red hot stones. Like, that's what that is, obviously. And when we got out, he was like, dude, did you see the spirit light that was moving back and forth between us? And I was like, dude, I thought that was your ring. And, like, there were no stones in the ring. Like, I just don't know. Like, I've been...
Yeah, I mean, it maybe wasn't this, it maybe wasn't that. It sounds very likely that it was hallucinatory, but again, I'm trying to get at why this is important, or why finding some sort of knowing seems so significant. Whether it was a reflection off of a gemstone from some small amount of light in the room, whether it was a bug, whether it was whatever, why does it feel like it's important to know?
Well, I can speak for myself. So, I've outside of the Native American context, I did that 20-ish years. I was out on the reservation a couple times. Like I met a lot of, the big named people in that grouping of people who do things. I have also been to Buddhist ceremony, Western lodge type. So your OTO, that kind of thing, Golden Dawn.
I'm happy to let you continue, but is this in service of answering the question why you care about what these lights are or what their origins are?
Yes.
Okay.
I've seen a lot of different things. There has only been this context, just the Native American ceremonial side of things that produced repeatable results. Now, they're not controllably repeatable, but they do happen enough that it's become a pattern for me and my wife, too.
Okay.
But
So
you are,
why?
again, it goes back to the whole, you're both human beings. So it's not surprising
Having
to
a
me.
human experience that we know
Right.
happens to humans. We know that humans hallucinate light. So why?
Right.
I don't. This is not at all meant to be a rude question, Josh.
No.
But like, why are we still? What is it that we're still not answering?
Nothing, I guess. I'm trying to figure out how to compile better data. Is it only possible moving outside of human sensory experience, or where do I go from there?
I've got an idea, and maybe you've tried this, but my thought would be have everyone bring a dog and see if the dog reacts to the light, or a cat, because a cat, if they spot it, they'll follow it with their eyes, they'll try to bat at it, things like that, or they'll be frightened. Maybe you guys should bring animals to the next one and just see if when these things show up, the animals respond too. Maybe it's something that their eyes can pick up as well, and if that's the case, what does that mean to you, and kind of explore that even further. Maybe their anatomy is similar in that they'll experience some of the same visuals you will, but you'll at least know for sure that it's not just a group idea or some kind of group hallucination if animals are responding to it who have no reason to be dishonest about their experience.
Sure. I mean, they can still respond to the same like hallucinations that they experience in light deprivation. Right. I think I would encourage, if you are trying to bring some amount of like rigor to this experiment, or however we're trying to frame it, that you ask yourself what would be an acceptable answer. And not to belabor the point, but I would like to point out that doing some research onto how the human eyeball works and how the human brain works and how human brains are known to hallucinate when deprived of light sounds very much like an acceptable answer.
Absolutely.
That I would want you to grapple with.
Absolutely.
Sure. But when we're talking about 8 or 9 people who
all have human eyes that have all been experiencing the exact same thing, where we know that in the absence of light, the human eyeball will hallucinate light.
Right. That's the thing, is the humans are always the base of this experiment. And as long as human beings are always the base of this experiment, all we're proving is that human beings' eyes respond the same way to whatever it is that they're experiencing in that moment.
Which has already been established in a laboratory. Mm-hmm. And I imagine that there are similar experiments on other mammals, including cats and dogs. I can't speak to that. I don't have that research in front of me, but I know absolutely that human beings do have this experience. Mm.
So going back to shared hallucination, because that is something that interests me very much, because I think that is the most likely, probably. But I can't find any data on that, like research on that, and I would like to learn more about it. Do you guys have? Could you direct me somewhere? Or do you?
I mean, nothing specific that I would point you towards, but I have to say it is kind of irrelevant in this moment. Like, even if none of you discuss your experience, even if nobody says to one another, this is what I saw, if we all know that you are all going through the exact same stimuli or the lack of stimulation, that you're all going to have a similar experience. It doesn't have to be, quote, shared in that sense. Whether you go in there individually or as a collective group, you're going to have the same results. There's nothing to suggest you're seeing the same magical orb, only that you are seeing magical orbs because that's how human eyes work.
So if you can track it down to a specific point in time and get 3 people who say, at this point, I saw X, Y, Z. And it's
That-
I mean,
they're all
maybe if
humans.
one person had been in the lodge for 10 minutes and another person had been in the lodge for 45 minutes and another person had been there in an hour and none of them saw anything, and then magically at the exact same moment they all saw something, like I suppose you could devise a experiment with some amount of controls to try and isolate this phenomena. But there do seem to be some very accurate, reasonable, simple explanations already well on hand. And I'm not trying to shove them down your throat, Josh, but your lack of interest in accepting them is maybe the part of the scientific rigor that I would encourage you to grapple with.
Yeah, that was my thought as well. Is the answer is there. We have the answer, and it is probably very biological. It's why we don't want that to be the answer, or why we doubt that that's the only answer that is curious to me.
Hold on a second, guys. Sorry. I am sitting down. Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, I think that's really it, guys. Do you have?
Well, I hope that you grapple with it. I very much appreciate your curiosity and interest here.
Thanks for calling.
Any ideas on where I could look up actual data on group hallucination? Because that's just also, it kind of just interests me.
I'm not a professional in that field, so I wouldn't want to point you somewhere and endorse something that I don't
even
know.
that term group hallucination needs to be operationalized in your research a lot more before you're going to find anything particularly useful. I mean, I myself would want to point you towards research and information about hypnosis, which is more closely related to my field and my area of interest, and doesn't necessarily answer your question, even if I think it maybe kind of would. So, yeah, I don't have anywhere in particular that I would point you to other than wanting to point out that you're going to need to operationalize your terms a bit more.
What does that mean? Operationalize. I'm not familiar.
When you say group hypnosis, you could be referring to a million different types of phenomena. And that notion is so broad that it doesn't really describe your experimental field.
Gotcha.
But you know what? Google Scholar as a place to start, just with some humility around what you are reading and your capacity for interpreting that data without a larger knowledge base to incorporate it into and scaffold it onto.
I would say thesaurus.com.
Being layman does make it a little more difficult.
Yeah.
Well, hey guys,
fair to say, but we're
to another caller.
Curious about your findings. And yeah, have a good one. Thanks for giving us a call.
Well, you too. Always nice to talk to you.
Okay, well, yeah, you did great to talk to you as well. Josh, we appreciate you. Sydney, I know we're getting a little bit long in the tooth, but I'd love to try and sneak in this conversation with Sean quickly if we may. Yeah?
Let's do it.
Okay, we're going to jump right in. Sean, you have some interest in, I guess, the notion of organized atheism. Yeah? What's on your mind?
How are you all?
Good. How are you?
Doing all right. What can we do for you today?
So I was actually off two things. I had the thing just said, and also, so I was in the tent with Josh, and I also saw the green light. I wanted to know what to say.
You're cutting out a little bit there.
Yeah, I didn't hear the last thing you said.
I was in the tent with Josh as well, and I also saw the green light.
Mm-hmm.
That's fascinating. What of it? How much of our conversation did you hear? What do you have to tell us?
I'm just kidding. I was just wondering this is, and what the Austin atheist community is all about. Is that the right thing?
Yeah, well, the Atheist Community of Austin is a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. At least that's how I like to describe the talking points. Tell me about your question.
I guess that really is my question. Is like, so what? Like, how long have y'all existed? What do y'all like? As far as nonprofit work, because I used to live somewhat close to Austin. I don't know. I'm just curious.
Oh yeah. So I like to think that I noticed like your question here on our screen is about community. I like to think that the ACA is just an example of a larger organization that replicates the community that you can also find in smaller batches. So for example, I don't live in Austin, I actually live in Phoenix, but the idea that there is community for people out there like us who don't believe in God, or we consider ourselves atheist or agnostic, or people who consider themselves humanist, or maybe they're not sure, we provide basically a place for them to go to listen to conversations that we have that they might not be able to have themselves. So for example, a lot of people, and maybe you've experienced this, maybe you haven't, a lot of people lose their family members or their community or their connections, or they even risk losing their job by asking these questions about the existence of God or the truth behind the Bible, or whether or not religion and history and research go hand in hand. And so I think one of the most important things about organizations like ours, like the ACA, is we provide that platform. We provide those conversations. Those people who maybe are too afraid or risk too much in having those conversations are welcome to come listen to us, be asked questions, answer questions, ask questions ourselves, have these conversations, make points, interview people who are professionals in their field, whether they are professionals in the field of history or science or theology. And we basically just provide a community, the same sense that churches often provide for Christians. We provide a community for people who, for whatever reason, are seeking answers to the same questions that we are.
Okay, so this could be like especially beneficial for someone that grows up in, say, a town with maybe 5,000 people, but 5 churches.
Exactly.
In a 10-mile proximity.
Exactly.
Not a lot of outlets.
Exactly.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so a lot of the work that we do is providing community for folks who feel isolated in that way, while also helping people to grapple with their experiences. You know, we live in a culture and in a global community where religion is thoroughly normalized, and many of the harms of religion are glossed over. And so having an opportunity to create community, but also create conversation around what it is like, for instance, to grow up in fear of the rapture or in fear of hell, to be shamed for your identity or your sexuality or your skepticism or your non-compliance with a set of morality that is not functional or useful in your life. Like, there's a lot of meaning to those types of conversations for people coming from all different kinds of backgrounds.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and then as far as like, because I would assume that for most people on the side would say that, the idea of actively trying to separate religion from, like you said, government or any actual like bodies of power, so like a school system, could negatively impact people if it's like strongly embedded with like a church mindset or a religious mindset. Like, what is you think in America the most realistic way to separate what would be like from a government standpoint or from the bodies of power? How do you separate church?
Yeah. So, Sean, we're having a very difficult time understanding you with a pretty weak connection. I will say that separation of church and state is an important part of our mission, and we do that through donations to a number of different organizations. We do that through having meaningful conversations and promoting the idea. On an individual level, we do that in the way that we vote, in the way that we engage with politics, the way that we shape the conversation around who is in power and who ought to be in power. It's definitely a challenging question to answer because it is such a broad issue, but separation of church and state is fundamental to our mission, and we attack it primarily through our education aspects, like programs like this, where we discuss issues and recognize the way that religion being encroached upon by religion encroaching on government causes harm to society.
And I think we also provide a place where people can come and say, just because members of leadership believe these things doesn't mean that we have to believe these things, or just because members of leadership, whether it be at a state, national level, whether it be a smaller level like your community, just because they say the 10 Commandments belong in schools, right? Doesn't mean that we have to say, yeah, the 10 Commandments belong in schools. We provide a place where people can learn that there are more of us out here that say, no, they don't belong in schools, or no, that isn't actual literature, or no, the Bible isn't a publication that should be studied by children as more than a historical document of like fiction, like Aesop's fables, how they are arguably important, but not because they're true. So I think the most important thing that we do is we help people recognize that they're not the only ones having these thoughts, and they don't have to agree with members of leadership who say these things, and they don't have to agree with people around them who all think the same thing. Because it turns out there's a lot more people who agree with the questions that we provide than the actual things they're being told by their church or in their community or by their leadership or by their politicians. They're just afraid to speak out because they think they're the only outlier in their community, when in reality there are millions of us out here.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thanks.
You can certainly
Thanks
find
for
out
asking.
more about our organization at atheist-community.org. Check out some of the content that we've put forward, but I appreciate your curiosity, and I hope that you will, on whatever level is appropriate to you, join our community of atheists.
Yeah, and I mean, if I could ask one more question, I just wonder, what do you think? And this is broad. What do you think is the biggest offense that, like, for instance, Christianity does, or like keeps it Texas? Like, and if you get personal, you could say like abortion, which I know is weird in Texas, or anything broadly speaking in America.
Yeah, I mean, again, Sean, you're kind of breaking up there a little bit.
I think he asked what the biggest, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think he asked what the biggest offense is that Christianity in, say, law and government and places of power commit on the American people. Is that correct, Sean?
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
I mean, I've got an answer, but Christy, you're
Please.
welcome to.
Yeah, I guess I'll just say quickly that as a gender and sexuality therapist, I have to say that for me, no wrong answers here, but for me, it has to do with the way that religion is prescriptive about our sexuality, that it tries to tell us that sex is for one specific thing or maybe two specific things, that it is only honoring to God, that it is only right or just when it exists in a monogamous cishet relationship, when it has been blessed by God when it is in the service of procreation or creating intimacy. All of those things are fine and great and wonderful, but there are so many forms of healthy, happy sexuality that don't look like that. And by creating a worldview in the way that we teach our children in schools, the mores and the way that we enforce them in our culture through TV and through mass media, like there's so many aspects of the way that we demonize healthy, normal sexuality that causes incredible trauma. I think that we are universally impacted by it, but it's also going to be incredibly differential if your own natural sexuality doesn't line up with what's being prescribed to you by religion and government.
Yeah. And I would say on a broader scale, I would say the biggest harm is shame. There is a direct link where religion shames people for physiological actions their body has done without their consent. So, for example, you are shamed for having sexual urges before marriage. You're shamed for having an ectopic pregnancy that cannot survive as a viable pregnancy. You're shamed for having questions and having doubts that arguably, in my opinion, aren't a choice at all. It's just your brain operating the way that your brain was made to operate. And so I think the biggest harm that religion and places of power puts on people is the idea that they should be ashamed of things that happen to them and thoughts that they have and biological urges that they have that are of no control of their own. And they should be ashamed of being interested in exploring those biological urges that they did not choose to have. And there are so many biological urges we can talk about, mental illnesses, things like that, that are of no control to the person that they are happening to. But religion says you should be ashamed. You should stop. You should keep yourself from acknowledging those. You should keep yourself from acting on those things, when in reality, it's just your body being the human body that you were given when you were born.
Okay. That's awesome. Do I need to go, or do I still have time?
Well, Sean, I do appreciate you calling in. If you would love to hear more, I'd love for you to call in on a slightly stronger connection and to check out our website, which is, again, atheist-community.org. But I appreciate your curiosity, and I hope that this community has something to offer you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Take good care. Sydney, fun show. We went to some interesting places. We did some cool stuff. I'm glad to have been in.
Yeah, this has been fun. I really enjoyed our calls today. I'm really impressed by the changes I've seen in Benji. Watching his thought processes just morph and change over time through talking to us, through doing his own research. I really enjoyed those questions there at the end from Sean. Mm-hmm. I forget sometimes that people are new to us, that people are here for maybe the first time or one of their first times. And so I love that he just kind of called in and was like, hey, what are you guys about? And gave us an opportunity to just go into a little more detail about what we think, what we believe while we're here. Wonderful question. So thank you, Sean, for calling in. Everybody called in with just really great thoughts and opinions today, and I was excited to talk to them.
Heard. Well, I want to say thank you for a $20 super chat. My friend Alan Ferguson saying, hi, Christy and Sydney. Great show. Very much appreciated. And with that, let's go ahead and get Aaron back in to remind us of the question of the week. We'll send out some love rings.
It's me again. Hello.
Hey, howdy, hey.
The question.
Like
the show is great. It was really interesting. Benji, it seems, is on. I'm kind of confused why Benji still believes in God. He seemed to be saying contradictory things, like he didn't go to the Bible yet. He still believed in the Christian God, things like that. So I'd be interested in hearing from Benji. So why do you still believe? What's holding you to this belief structure? Because I couldn't quite figure that out. And then Josh, he's seeing lights, and he seems to want to know if they're hallucinations or not. Maybe a camera might help determine if they're real or not. And let's grant them that they're not hallucinations, that they're real. Okay, what does that mean?
Yeah,
they're just lights.
Sure.
They're just lights now, right? So they're just lights. And appreciated Sean's call as well. And I'm not sure I have an answer. Maybe that Christianity is the answer. That would probably be the greatest harm that I think that it does, that this is somehow a Christian nation and that we need to follow Christianity. There's no other dogma other than Christianity. I think that's very, very harmful.
It's fundamental to our legal system that it needs to be taught to children in schools. It's scary ideas.
It's bullshit. Those are bullshit ideas.
Our legal system that insisted the separation of church and state was also
in the first damn place. Yeah. Heard. It's a problem. It's a problem.
Yes. And so our question of the week this week is, I got to get over here to the document. Who is the rarely talked about fifth horseman of the apocalypse? Put your answers down below in the comments to this video.
Mm-hmm. All right. We'd love to hear your answers. Who are y'all sending out love rings to today?
James Randi.
Rational thinkers everywhere.
Fair enough. Everybody who helps work on the show, everybody who called in and participated, why the hell not? Bonnie Blue as well. Thank y'all so much for joining me today. And I guess I'll go ahead and say that, if you don't believe, this is your community and we appreciate you being here. And if you do believe, we don't hate you. We're just not convinced.
Not at all.
We want the truth. So watch Truth Wanted live Fridays at 7 p.m. Central. Call 512-991-9242 or visit tiny.cc/call TW.